He showed me that we could make money placing entry-level salespeople in technology jobs. So we built that business, right? I built it with him for the next 7 years. And that business still exists today, still my best friend. It's a very successful business.
So what's next, Rob? So you are doing amazing. So let's talk about your investment side of the things. I know we talked a bit more about your grid and the other businesses. Rob, as the investor, what do you hold today and where do you see yourself tomorrow?
If you're a real estate agent, you're like, nobody could sell houses better than I can. Nobody can service my sellers better than me. Nobody can service buyers better than me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bigger Life Podcast. Today we have awesome guest out of Northern Virginia, Rob. Rob is founder of Grid, which is one of the largest investor network communities. Hey Rob, how are you doing today?
Ray, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you over here. So Rob, tell us a little bit more about Grid and then we'll talk more about your other side of, businesses.
Sure. Grid was my little pet project many years ago, where I was just building community locally to really put myself in a room with other real estate investors, real estate entrepreneurs, and that little idea grew. Today we have 35,000 investors around the country, led by 40 community leaders around the country, and it continues to grow. We know that real estate is all local, right? So what happens in Georgia is very different than what happens here in Northern Virginia. Yet the concepts are the same, but the markets are different, right? And so there's lots of different strategies that we help people understand and learn, all for free, by the way, like zero cost, for them to really learn the game of real estate investing, and to get in rooms with people that are also real estate investing, because I think that there's something very powerful in being able to see other people doing it in your backyard, and you could say to yourself, if that person could do it, I could do it too. So it's been a blessing for me in my life and my business to have built this community, and we're just going to continue to build it and really serve the real estate investment community.
This sounds like a great community. So how did you get that idea of Grid in the first place? What were you doing before Grid and how did you kind of thought about Grid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started. I'll take you back to the very beginning. Right, I started during right before the dot-com boom, a recruiting business with my best friend. He really started that recruiting business, and a month later I joined him. He showed me that we could make money placing entry-level salespeople in technology jobs. And when you're 24 years old and somebody tells you they'll pay you $5,000 to place one of your friends at one of their jobs, you're like, oh my God, somebody's going to pay me $5,000 for that. So we built that business, right? For I built it with him for the next 7 years, and that business still exists today. He's still my best friend. It's a very successful business, but I asked him to buy me out in 2005, because fundamentally I'd fallen in love with real estate. You see, the issue with that business is that it's fee for service. Every time you sell something, you make some money, you make really good money, but you don't make any kind of reoccurring revenue from that business, unless we would have started a consulting practice, which he didn't want to do. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. I don't want to go compete with my best friend. So in the summer of '05, I ventured into this world of real estate investing full time. I'd been a part time investor from like 99 to 2005, just buying one house a year and slowly falling in love with the business. And in the summer of '05, if you were in real estate during that time, it was on fire. It was so hot, right? We're about to enter into, the 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 crisis just a couple years later, right? And I told my wife, I think that we're going to go through some kind of recession in real estate, not because I understood, Ray, like the economics behind it. It just felt extremely frothy and totally irrational exuberance, lots of irrational exuberance, very similar to what I experienced in the dot-com boom and bust. And I'd lived through that, right? I had lived through making a lot of money and then making no money, right? And then being like, oh my God, I got to pivot. So in the summer of '05, I decided that I was going to be this real estate investor full time, and I wanted to start building community with people who were already doing it, Ray. I had attended other RIAs, like real estate investment associations, right? For those that don't know what a RIA is, I'd attended some of those, and I didn't like the format. The format, Ray, was let me teach you just enough to be dangerous, and then you two for $1,000, $10,000, whatever the price ticket, you could buy the course in the back of the room, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, in fact, I believe in people paying for education. But I remember thinking, I want to create a transparent, open environment where I could just, like all the information is given and that the flow of information is just 100% like Gary Vee style, jab, jab, right hook, like just come from contribution. And so that's what I started, right? It wasn't called Grid at the time. It was just my little investment network, right? It was called the Cause Investor Network locally. And that thing just started growing, right? First, it was 5 people in the room, then 10, 20, then 100. And before I knew it, I had people from other markets driving a couple of hours to my investment group just to spend time, right? And then somebody approached me and said, "Hey, this is great, but can you open one up in my backyard?" And I'm like, "Well, that's an hour away from where I live, and I was like, no, I can't, right? I'm busy. I was like building another business, right? Grid was just my investment network was just kind of like my fun on the side thing. And after 2 or 3 people asking me to open up in other markets, I finally decided to look at some different models in order to make that happen. And so I landed on the licensing model where I could actually license how we run the play, license our brand, and then give people this community in a box so that they could run it at the local level. And the reason why they would want to run it, Ray, is because it's a lead generation like machine for their business. I have not found a better lead generation machine than building community and pouring into people. And and what happens is when you pour into people, they pour back into you, right? Through whatever kinds of referrals you want, right? If you're a hard money lender, you're going to get hard money leads. If you're an agent, you're going to get agent leads. If you're a property manager, you're going to get property management leads. If you're looking for deals, you're going to get deals, right? And so we've since licensed that out to other leaders from other brands because like I am an agent, right? Like one of the things I believe in is that the license having as an investor, having the license is very powerful. And I love my agent community because they're the connectors in community. And so I wanted to empower them with this community in a box built specifically for them, and they could partner with other investors, local investors, to run them because they are the biggest connectors in the community. And so the room and the power of that network grows to the size of the leader that's there. And so that's how it started, right? It was just me looking for community, and then I ended up licensing it to other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is it a nonprofit or is it for profit? So
No, no, we're for profit. It's a total it's a total for profit, right? It's a for profit business. We support the leaders at the local level with showing them how to lead the room. We give them coaching on the different types of strategies. So what I realized, I remember when I sat down and I designed the curriculum. I looked back at my career and I said, okay, if I was brand new, just starting out as a real estate investor, like what would I need to learn first? Well, I was like, well, I would really need to understand this concept of wholesaling.
mhm.
Why? Because you need to understand when you actually learn how to wholesale, you learn how to market for deals, which is really important. You need to learn what value is, like after repair value, extremely important. You need to learn what things cost, like what's it going to cost me to fix this thing up, extremely important, right? You need to build a network of rehabbers, extremely important, right? And so I was like, that's I would need to understand that concept first. And then I built each month a subsequent learning that would add to that learning. right? So it's like, okay, great. You learned the concept of wholesaling, but now I need to learn how to make the telephone ring. So the next month was like, how do you actually market for deals, right?
Mm.
And there's only three ways to market. Like you network, you prospect, you network, and you market for deals, right? Those three. So we taught that how to make that happen. Then it's like, how do you talk to sellers, right? So the next month is how do you actually talk to sellers and negotiate? And it goes, and we broke it down so that by the end of the year, it's about being the bank, right? Because ultimately, Ray, you should have a family bank. I should have a family bank. Like we should all own assets and think of us ourselves as like a family bank, right?
Yep.
And that's how we designed it, and that's how and that has not changed, Ray, in 17 years, right? That's how long I've executed the play.
This is amazing what you are teaching. And you said you're teaching this for free, right?
Yeah, we give that away for free. We do have private one-on-one coaching, right? But we don't pitch. Like our whole area is like a pitch-free zone, right? People know we'll do other workshops that are separate, that might be like 2-day workshops where people will pay for, right? But the monthly meetings are completely free, and literally we give it all away at the monthly meetings, right? What I found is that people want, though, hand holding through the process. They really need guidance through the process. And so those people normally approach us and say, "This is great, Rob. I get this. I need more." And so we created some products to help them take them from where they are to where they want to go.
Okay. Well, this is really powerful what you're doing. Kudos, man. This is awesome.
Thanks, Roy.
Let's talk about other. I know you're vertically integrated into your real estate business, right? Into what you really believe into your investment side of the thing. So you became an investor first, and then you started all these different businesses on the real estate side. So talk to us about what all you're doing and how it all kind of sparked one thing after the other and how it led to it, and
Yeah, Ray. What I realized was when I was fixing and flipping 30 houses a year with my wife. So I'll take you kind of like on this journey, right? So we were fixing and flipping 30 small multifamilies, fixing them up, putting tenants into them, and then selling them to investors turnkey. And then the investor said to us, "Hey, this is great, but can you manage these properties for us? Like we need a manager." So we started the management side of the business, right? And by the way, I got my license because I wanted to, one, stay compliant, two, get referral fees. So I got my real estate license. And um, fast forward a couple years, we had 300 assets under management. My wife is going crazy because she's like, this property management business is so hard, right? The business, Ray, was 2.5 hours away from where we lived, right? We had a little baby girl at the time. So we had set up another office like a couple hours away from where we lived. We hired people that were local. And and by so full circle, we ended up selling that business, that property management business, to the people that helped us build that business that were supporting us locally. And they've got a fantastic portfolio of over 500 units today, right, that they manage it in that market. But what we realized was that that was a lot of work for a little money for us because it was a sub market. And I started valuing my time differently. I started saying, well, what's my highest dollar per hour activity, and what is it that I'm actually trying to accomplish with all of this stuff? When I first got into real estate investing, it wasn't to fix and flip houses or to property manage. It was to buy and hold assets, right? So that those assets over time would pay for my life, right? That was the whole ethos. I remember thinking, well, and by the way, I didn't mention this before. So we're fixing and flipping 30 houses. We're managing these 300 units. And I was selling about 12 to 15 houses a year as an agent. Okay. And so we were doing them all okay, working really hard, spread really thin. Okay. And I remember thinking, I think I need to kill two of these things and focus on one of them and go all in on that one to generate the cash flow that I truly want to generate. Right. And I made a decision. I said, based on my experience, based on my skill set, based on my network, I discovered that I was very good at the brokerage agent side of that business. I had owned that recruiting business before, and so I built a very big network, and I had a network of affluent VPs of sales and sales managers and salespeople that I was selling real estate for. And um, and so I said, well, I think what we're going to do. I remember having this conversation with my wife. Right, this is now 2009. And by the way, I was still actively 2008. I was actively buying as an investor and putting those properties in my portfolio. Right, but I said to my wife, I think what we need to do is change where our focus is. And instead of fixing and flipping all these properties, and there's a lot of inherent risk in flipping assets, right? We should help the consumer buy better because we know how to buy really, really well as investors and how to sell better, right? Because we knew how to make the most money from every asset because we were doing it for ourselves, right? And that's how we'll create our 30, 60, 90-day cash flow. And then we'll take that cash flow and we'll continue to buy assets. See, one thing that I learned was when you fix and flip one asset, it might take you for 3, 4, 5 months to do it. And let's say you make 50,000 on that. Phenomenal. Great. You make 50 grand, right? But I learned that I could take 5 listings in a month and make 50,000 that month, right? Like, or within a 60-day time period. And so what I did was I compressed how quickly I was getting cash into my bank account by focusing on that side of the business. Now, that could be done as a wholesaler too. I consciously made the decision, oh, I want to be known as the agent that just knows a shitload about investments and work with builders and developers and investors because I like that space, right? And I'll help the everyday consumer like buy better, sell better because I have this inherent knowledge that they don't have. And I add a lot of value there, right? So fast forward to today, because that was like 2008, 2009, right? Um, we now have a multi-discipline business, right? We have Grid that kind of sits at the top, and it's a parent company, and we have a brokerage arm called Kaza, where our brokerage is actually EXP, but when I say brokerage, it's we're agent teams. We have multiple teams in other markets, so Knoxville, Tennessee, Raleigh, North Carolina, multiple locations in Virginia, DC, Maryland, and and we want to continue expanding that business because that business uh, does a really good job of helping local investors with their assets. And then we decided to open up property management again because it's a good business. What I discovered during the sale of my first property management business was that it had intrinsic value. Somebody came and bought my contracts, and I was like, oh my god, that was powerful. I was like, we rebuilt, the property management business, and then because of my skill set, I had agents that were on my team that said, Rob, like the agent business is cool, but I really love the other side of the business of the wholesaling novation business. Would you start a business with me and coach and train me on how to do that? Which I did, right? So we have an acquisition side of the business called Sell Simply, right? And that is doing phenomenal. So it's such a great business. And then through the years, we'd given because of Grid, right? Um, Grid is a great tool for hard money lenders, and we had given so many deals to hard money lenders and so many deals to construction, like crews over the years. I was like, why don't we start a hard money business, right? And I again, when I say why don't we, it's not Rob. I find a leader, I find somebody I believe in, I give them an opportunity, and then I pour fuel on that business because I have these other teams that bring deals right to the hard money business. And so we did the same with the hard money business. Then we did the same with construction, pre-sale renovation, construction work. And what I realized that we've done over the years is that we are really kind of almost like a leadership incubator for these small businesses. And that Grid is really a community that funnels business to these businesses. And it's been a blessing. Like I found purpose, I should say, right, in helping these entrepreneurs build businesses that serve their life. Does that make sense? And I happen to own pieces of those businesses, right? Whether it's 50%, 30%, 20, like we have a title business as well. I own 20% of that title business. So we've created this ecosystem for the real estate investment community. And we have a holding company, Grid, that owns these businesses, and they're best of breed at what they do.
This is really interesting how you are doing the real estate side of the businesses and vertically integrating them. I have seen generally what you see is the acquisition side or holding side along with property management, but you being starting off with a grid where you are coaching people and using that as a lead funnel and then identifying the leaders and starting up all these different businesses and each business is then because it's sister companies, right? And I believe a lot of
They all
them,
feed each other.
they all
Mhm.
feed each other. This is awesome. I have not talked to anybody who's doing it at that level.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you said that grid. What it did for me was it put me in front of every single month 50 to 100 real estate entrepreneurs, and I was able to identify the leaders that I wanted in my world from that group. So it was almost like a talent acquisition machine for me, right? So the person that runs Market Ready Remodeling, who started with me 16 years ago, came from that room. The person that helped me rebuild Grid, like the brand that you see today, her name is Jessica Swingle, came from that room 12, 13 years ago, right? The leader that runs my Gainesville office on the agent side of the business came from that room. And then I just name them. The person that just opened North Carolina for me in Raleigh came from that room. So it became this like unbelievable talent acquisition tool, right? And that's why I say it was a blessing to like I didn't do it on purpose, Ray. Put it that way. it was it just happened that way. That wasn't part of a master plan. I just wanted to build community and build and be surrounded by people that were doing really cool things in our space, and it created opportunity.
Well, we only create master plans are created by somebody else. So up there.
That's right. That's right.
He has a bigger master plan for us. So great.
For sure.
So what's next, Rob? So you are doing amazing. So let's talk about your investment side of the things. I know we talked a bit more about your grid and the other businesses. Rob, as the investor, what did you hold today, and where do you see yourself tomorrow?
So we hold um, like 20 single family houses, right? And they're all single families. The majority of those, half of that portfolio is paid for free and clear, right? Um, and everybody's always like, why would you pay those assets off? And why would you want them free and clear, right? Part of it was we bought them in 2008. So we bought them at really good prices and at really good interest rates, like it's like 4% interest rate. And we put them on 15-year notes. And we paid them off because we wanted to make sure that we created a solid foundation in our life, right? Like we wanted a solid, unshakable foundation. But then what we did was we took an equity line against those assets and we used that equity line to lend money, right? And so we arbitrage money that way. We also own multifamily, not a lot of them, right? Like um, 3 multifamily properties. We've sold. Remember, like I told you, we were buying like all these before. We sold a lot of them because they weren't great assets, right? Like I learned the type of assets that I wanted to own were going to be closer in my backyard as opposed to 2.5 hours away. And a lot of the assets that we'd bought, when I was in that, my younger years of just like buying and hustling like houses, I thought more houses meant more money, and it doesn't. For those that are listening, right? The right assets in the right markets, like create all your wealth, right? The wrong assets, older product, non-growth markets can literally be alligators for you. And so we shed many of those through the years. When it comes, like one of my regrets, Ray, it's both a regret, like there's always two sides to a coin. And it's this: from the age of 25 to 35, I bought a lot. Like all the stuff, the portfolio that I talked to you about, the majority of that I bought between the ages of 25 and 35. And then from 35 to 45, I was really busy building teams, right? Learning how to run these machines. And I didn't buy as much because one, like I thought everything was overpriced. In 2012, 2013, right? Because I bought at such low prices during the crisis, my brain was jaded, right? I was like, why would I buy that for $250,000 when I bought it for a buck 10 just a couple years ago, right? Like today, those things are like worth $500,000, right? And like, it's just like, I, I wish somebody would have been like, kid, just keep buying, right? So for those that are listening, just keep buying. So in 2019, I woke up again, right, Ray? I was like, what am I doing? I need to go back into my buying frenzy. So in 2019, I started looking at buying in this little town called Front Royal, like out the Winchester, like just about an hour out from where I lived, because I saw that all growth was kind of going that way. And I was definitely one of those COVID people that decided to go buy a river house when the sky was falling because of COVID. And I fell in love with that area. So we just started buying like Airbnbs in that market. Well, they weren't Airbnbs. We were converting them to Airbnbs, right? Like in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, right? 2024. And we've just been picking off really good choice assets. And I'm buying them in partnership with people on my team because one of the things I want, Ray, is to teach people on my team how to build wealth through real estate. So I own many of those assets with people on my team. In particular, I own the majority of them with a gentleman by the name of Mike Capello, who runs Sell Simply. And he's the acquisition arm of our business, really focuses a lot in that market. So we get first look at the ones that we want to keep in our portfolio and then just assign, and assign and sell the rest, right? So we will continue to do that, right? I will continue to do that. I'm not a big multifamily buyer. I'm not I'll probably end up buying a storage unit out in that market. But we've done very well with our short-term rentals in that market. Even today, even with all the negative news around short-term rentals, like we do very well with those short-term rentals, right? And I like that, unlike a multifamily property, there's pros and cons, right? Like the multifamily property is always going to be based on the income that's there. The single family houses, and by the way, there's not a lot of multis in our market, Ray. So it's not like it's an option. I'd have to go outside the market. You know, we might do that at some point. But I find that these single family houses, if we need to sell an asset or two, we can very quickly to people that will always pay premium because they're buying it because of emotion, not because of actual logic based on the math of the revenue that's coming out of them. And so I like that because I just get better premium when I do it. So that's what we're doing, and we want to, just so you know where my brain is, right? We will continue to buy more assets in that market. With Grid, we're going to form an investor club so that people within Grid can buy with us, right? In not just that market, any market. So like if I was to kind of tell you how my different hats have operated through the years, I had my investor hat on when I was younger. Then I put my retail agent hat on, right, for a while and built those businesses. And now my investor hat is back on. And I'm like, okay, we're going to continue like investing in businesses because I realized if you know how to run a really great small little business, like the return on investment on that capital is awesome, right? So continue to do that and continue to buy assets in markets that I feel are poised for growth in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, and talk to me a little bit more about your business, Sell Simplicity or Sell. Is it more like a wholesaling group that you have where you are acquiring these properties and then assigning the contracts?
Correct. Correct. It's a sales and marketing at the core. Like all these businesses are sales and marketing businesses, right? So once you understand the blueprint of how to run one, you understand the blueprint of the other. So it's not any different than my agent team business. It's just the message is different, right? The message for that business is speed and convenience, right? Hey, do you want to sell your house? Like, do you want to sell it quickly? Do you don't want the friction of like putting it on the market? You want to sell it in as is condition. Like that's the messaging of that business. And I had to do that, Ray, because I realized in my agent side of the business, we have a couple different programs. Like we have a program that helps sellers sell like off market for cash quickly. But if I was going to be their true fiduciary, I wasn't going to be the one buying that, right? Like I needed to expose that to the entire investor market so that that consumer could make the most from that market. Which, if I always do that, it would preclude me from buying assets, right? That I would want. So I literally had to create a sister brand in another market that I was like, okay, you guys are just buying houses in that market, and we're adding those to our portfolio. Does that make sense?
So as an investor, and I'm a licensed agent as well, although I just use my license just for my own investments. As you said, it helps with the referral fee plus the speed of doing things. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. Let's talk about scalability. I'll tell you
Sure.
my personal thing here for a moment. I own
Hmm.
about 10 units, 10 single family homes. We do
Hmm.
primarily Airbnbs and short-term rentals, add some work, which is different than long-term rentals. There's invoices, bills, cleaners, check-ins, checkouts, a whole shebang. But from here, I sometimes feel like it's holding my hand from scaling. So let's do some brainstorming here.
Yeah, yeah, Ray. I always tell people there's no way in God's green earth that I would do Airbnbs if it wasn't for my rock star assistant who she's the super host and she rocks it. Kayla James, shout out to you. She rocks it. She loves it, Ray. There's no way I would ever do this, right? So this is the beauty of having a talent bench where I can pull people in from different segments of my business to do things, right, to give me leverage. So her job is to give me leverage. Part of that leverage is to manage that portfolio so I don't even have to think about it, right? So for you to scale at some point, you're going to have to figure out that leverage either through offshore talent and automation, AI, in order to free yourself from the day to day. Now, what I find is that many times the person running that business, their identity is tied to running that business. So they think that their value is in them doing the work. And the truth is it's not. You could just like your value is derived by finding assets and managing buying those assets right. And everything else should get outsourced, right? Through technology or through offshore talent that you could pay, you know, somebody $5 an hour to essentially execute your play, right? So if you're doing any of the day-to-day activity of being a superhost, I'm going to say stop it. Stop that, Ray. Your growth is on the other side of that leverage.
And you're right, and I think about the same way. We are using some technology, but it's still because we started with house hacking, where we started renting our basement, and it was personal in that, during 2020 when the COVID hit, that's when I started doing Airbnb with my personal basement, and it became personal. And that nature of connecting with guests, I think, has not gone away, even though on the acquisition side, we have made some great acquisitions. And you're right, I mean, the money is on the acquisition side, right? Finding those good assets that you think is the right fit for your market, just like you said, in your backyard.
Ray, here's what. So my assistant, I've never talked to anybody that's ever rented from any our Airbnbs at all, ever, right? She has always been the person, and so she provides great customer service and a great experience. So what I want to have you shift in your mind is that it has to be you, right? It just has to be a who that represents your standards, your vision of how somebody wants to be treated, right? And this is very common. This happens at every business, right? At every level where, If you're a real estate agent, you're like, nobody could sell houses better than I can. Nobody can service my sellers better than me. Nobody can service buyers better than me. I'm like, I haven't been on a listing or a buyer appointment in like a decade, right? But what I did was I transferred all of my standards and our mission, visions, values, and beliefs to other very talented people, and I train them to those standards. And then they execute the play, and they do it way better than I would ever do it, right? Um, and so I think what holds many very successful salespeople back, I call it the success trap, right? Of a super salesperson, is that they're fantastic, they're amazing, like they're really, 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 really good, and yet they get stuck in this transaction treadmill because they're the doer of the transaction, and then they start getting exhausted because they are the doer of the transaction, and because they're so effective and efficient, they don't give anybody else the opportunity and chance to take over like their business, or to take over that lead, or to take over that seller, or take over that buyer. Because as soon as that person messes up just a little bit, they're like, you see, nobody could do it as well as I can. So they take back the job, right? And that's small thinking. That's small thinking. Now, the on the bright side though, it makes it very profitable for that person, because they don't have to pay anybody else to do it, right? It does affect how much you bring home, because you've got to pay somebody else to do it. But what it does is that it gives you back all of your time, right? And one of the most precious resources we have, right, is time, right? And so if you could start looking at your time differently and saying, what is my dollar per hour cost, right? And if you kept yourself in your zone of genius, you might find it's $2,000 an hour work, $3,000 an hour work, $5,000 an hour work, and you could afford to pay somebody else to execute the plays, right? So it's emotionally hard for people sometimes to like do that, and it also starts taking people on what I call a leadership journey. It's a new skill set. Like, you learned, Ray, how to find the deals and then how to manage those deals really, really well, right? Like, find the deals and you fund the deals, you put the right debt on them, and then how to manage that asset super well, right? And so now you're like, okay, but can anybody be as good as Ray at managing these assets? And in your mind, you're like, no. But in reality, the answer is yes. And your job just should be to go find another one, and go find another one, and go find another one, right? That's how scaling actually happens. Now you have to go on a leadership journey, which is a new skill set that a lot of people have. They're like, okay, well, now I've got to hold somebody accountable to doing the work. I'm like, yes, you do, but it doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be crazy. Like, I have um, a young leader. She's 26. She runs one of my teams in Reston. That team will net around $700,000 a year, and I spend about 1 hour max a week with her, right? 1 hour max a week with her, like one-on-one time. She sees me often in a lot of like our trainings, like, and I probably spend in those trainings a max of 2 hours a week, right? Like 8:30 a.m. energy huddles, maybe like, I mean, that would be generous that it's that much time. So let's just say it's a total of 3 hours, right? But she runs that entire operation. She runs that entire business. And that's one of the teams that we have. But what I did was I trained her on the standards. I trained her on the math associated with running that business. I give her guidance on leading a team of the size that she has. And so I got back all my time. So I could go focus on building grid, right? So I could go focus on building, other leaders.
Awesome.
It's the same thing. Same thing for you.
Yeah. Now, you're right. I mean, at some point of time, we have to think owner versus operator. And the challenge is when you start, just like when you first started and you are the owner and the operator, and you're so much in love with that operations, or you kind of forget that you are the owner and you have to segregate the operator side of the things, and you have to
Yes.
give away this operations to somebody. Although you're right, I mean, there's a cost, but the trade-off is this time and scalability. To me, it's really scalability that you're missing on. I mean, time as entrepreneurs will find we always need this time back to invest it somewhere else, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're going to invest that time into higher dollar productive activities. Typically, is what
Exactly.
happens,
Yeah.
right?
Get out of this maybe $10 per hour kind of a operations role and invest it where you can make thousands. So for anybody who's listening this as a new investor
Mm-hmm.
and you have seen it all, you have done it all, you have your hands wet into so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
As a new investor who are sitting on the fence and they have listened to some podcasts and they're like, okay, I want to invest.
Mm-hmm.
Where should they start in today's market? Given, there's we won't go into politics or anything like that, but just purely from an investment standpoint, what do you think is a right way of starting today? Assuming they have maybe some money set aside that they can probably invest, but they don't know enough.
Are they a full time investor, or are they've got their W-2 job, they've got a job, right, and
Yeah,
they
that's what
want
I'm
to.
assuming. A typical investor in my head is just like anybody else starts, right?
Okay,
They got their W-2 jobs, they got some money set aside, they have invested into 401ks, but they have this pool of money sitting into the bank, and then they're always thinking, hey, I should maybe invest into real estate. Now they have their personal home, but they're also thinking maybe we should invest into real estate, but they're always
sure,
afraid, you know? So
yeah,
that's a typical use case.
yeah, and then then I wonder about their age and also their tolerance for discomfort, right? And what do I mean by that? Like you said something that was true for my life as well, right? My first deal that I bought was a house hack, and that house hack essentially gave me the confidence to be an investor because I realized, oh, there's a market that people will actually rent my house, and I learned how to work with people, and so that I was like 25 years old, and it was a very simple way to enter into the game. I lived in the walkout basement. I had my own private bathroom and shower downstairs, right? I built that. And then the middle level was the kitchen, living room, and then the top level were bedrooms. So it was a very easy way for me to start, right? Um, and so why I say age and discomfort is because, if you're just graduated from college, like you're used to co-living, right? You're used to that. And you're like, oh, like what a easy way. Maybe you're not married, so it's easy for you to kind of house hack your first way, right? Discomfort is like if you actually have a family and you want, you know, and now you've got to convince your significant other, hey, babe, we're going to rent the basement out to somebody else. There's a little discomfort, right? In the family, like you've got people coming in and out and all that stuff. And now you're more established. But that's also a really great way for people to learn, right? And by the way, if you're asking me, where should people focus? Okay, so this is another important question. I always look at, well, what's the problem that we're facing, right? Well, the problem that we're facing is an affordability problem, right? Which is why you see co-living is actually a very big thing right now, right? Why house hacking is still so wildly powerful because it's just it's just another form of co-living, right? House hacking, you're living in the house yourself. Co-living, you've just said, okay, I'm cool with multiple people living in this house, and and so I would say, where can you put yourself in the path to help solve a big problem that we have in the United States when it comes to affordable housing, right? Some people might say, well, I want to build those kinds of properties for people. Somebody else might say, oh, I will buy an existing asset and retrofit it for multiple people, right? So you see, like you, and what's so cool about this business, right, is that people's different personalities and passions lead them down different roads, right? So I'll give you an example. I have a good friend of mine that is very successful in the sober living home space. Okay, what is that? It's like these are recovering alcoholics that have kind of life is is hit them really really hard, and they've either were institutionalized because of it. There might be some mental health issues that are there, but now they're transitioning back into like society, but they need a place to live to transition back in, right? And or they were released from prison, right? Now they need a place to live. And so he's found passion around that rehabilitation piece. And and by the way, he showed me how you could take something like in Northern California, right, where you know maybe the average rent might be like 4 grand a month, and he's now through sober living can generate $9,000 a month, okay, from that same asset. It requires more work, right? It requires, but but he loves it because he's tied profit and purpose, and I think that whoops, that's a very important thing when you tie profit and purpose. So I think anybody starting off has to taste things, Ray. They need to be like, what type of investing is out there? What resonates with me? Like I have another friend of mine that like he hates anything to do with tenants. All he does is notes. He loves the note business. That's his thing, right? And is there opportunity in notes today? Absolutely.
Mm.
Will there be tomorrow? Absolutely, right? And so it's actually one of the reasons why within uh, a grid community or even any RIA that's out there, they teach you all the different types of investing that are out there, right? From co-living to syndicating to hard money, right? To multifamily to large multifamily, small multifamily, single family homes, Airbnbs, like you name it, so that you could taste what's out there, and then determine based on your upbringing, your background, your skill set, your job profile, right? Your temperament, like which one's right for you. Like I was definitely a sales and marketer guy. Does that make sense? Like my
Hmm.
personality was geared more towards people, sales, marketing, right? I didn't like the project management side as much. I liked hunting for the deal, getting the deal, negotiating the deal. Well, that means I'm not a builder, right? Like I'm not a builder, right? Like the builders are like they're the craftsmen. They love the details. They love all that stuff. It doesn't mean I can't own a building company though, right? Doesn't mean I can't own one, right? I just have to find the right operator to run that kind of business. Like our hard money business, I'm in partnership with somebody who is an operator that loves money. Like every dime is accounted for all the time. It's like he is so good with money, right? Um,
To the
and
last
I'm not
penny.
as to the last penny, right? Like that's not my personality. So I partnered with somebody who's like that, right?
Yeah.
And and so we have to take a self assessment of us and say, based on who I am, the skill set I have, the interest I have, and what's happening in the economy today, where can I put myself in the path of money? And by the way, that's the other thing I want people to hear. This is really important. I learned this during every crisis. Like I went through the .com crisis, I went through the real estate financial crisis. I was in the storm of both of those, right? And what I found was that in each one of those markets, somebody was always making money. That like it was almost like money was energy. It just shifted into a different area. And if you were able to shift quickly into that area, you would succeed. And if you shifted slowly, you would die, right? And so the biggest skill set was your ability to adapt, right? During the .com implosion as a recruiter, just to give you an example, like tech sales jobs, very difficult to make a living. But I pivoted and started placing real estate people, believe it or not, Ray, in brokerages and in home buying companies, because what was happening during that time in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, like the real estate and mortgage business was killing it. So even though tech had imploded, real estate was like on an upswing. And during the financial crisis, when that happened, even within the real estate space, the REO agents were killing it, the short sale agents were killing it, and your traditional agent was dying, right? title companies killed it because they still had to like process all of that paperwork, right? So there's always somebody making money in any market. You just got to put yourself in the path of that. So the question you have to ask is, where is it moving? Where's the flow, right? With the AI that's happening right now, there's a radical transformation of business. And the person that's slow to adjust is going to die. Like they will not survive. And the people that are fast to adjust are, hopefully make it out.
You're right. Money is like energy, as you said. I like that notion that you used. It just shifts its shape or form, and how quickly you can analyze it, and how quickly can you position yourself to make use of that, and you will be as successful. Just like even with stock markets, when stock markets crash, at every crash, you can still make use of it, or you can just be sitting and you can lose money out of that. Awesome. That's great advice. I mean, finding profit with passion, and that can actually give you more money as well, and you'll enjoy what you're doing.
I think at the end of the day, right, and this is actually a very important thing, is that everybody has to find their thesis for investing. Otherwise, you're going to just be a collector of a lot of different theses, right? Like a lot of different types of assets. When you find the one that you're like, oh, I can replicate this over and over again, I could print money doing
Mhm.
this. Maybe it's buying hotels. Maybe it's doing storage. So I have a good friend of mine, like he just does high end storage in really expensive markets. Maybe it's co living. Maybe it's sober living. Once you find the thing that you feel passionate about and makes you money, like stamp that, right? Just go super deep.
Absolutely. Well, that's all great details, Rob. Thank you. Thanks for joining today's episode of Bigger Life Podcast. I appreciate you joining and sharing so much about the grid, your businesses, and also great advice for the new investors.
Thank you, Ray. It's been my pleasure.
And to our viewers, thanks for joining. We'll be back next week with another episode of Bigger Life Podcast. Stay tuned until then. Thank you.